Developments out of Memphis where the fallout is growing in the Tyre Nichols case. The Memphis Fire Department has now fired 2 EMTs and a lieutenant, saying they violated numerous policies and protocols when they were called to the scene on January 7th after Nichols had been beaten and pepper sprayed. Those terminations were confirmed late today by the fire chief, who released a letter which says the EMTs failed to conduct an adequate patient assessment of Nichols. Also today, the Memphis Police Department revealed that in all 7 officers were relieved of duty on January 8th. The 5 officers who were charged in Nichols' death, plus 2 more who have not been charged. Protesters are taking to the streets again tonight, renewing calls for police reform and demanding justice for Tyre. This was Chicago just moments ago, where many gathered at Federal Plaza, making their voices heard. That follows the largely peaceful protests that took place over the weekend across the country from coast to coast: New York City, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Boston, and more. Right now, let's go to Memphis and NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson, who has the very latest on these major developments, Priscilla, both from the police and the fire department. So let's kind of break it down, start with the police. What do we know about these 2 officers who we now know were relieved of duty earlier this month, and how is Nichols' family reacting to all this?
Right, Joe. Those 2 officers were placed on administrative leave. They have not been fired, and the department says the reason why their names were not originally released was because the investigation is still ongoing, and again, because they have not been fired. And while the department has declined to say the identity of one of those officers, we now know the identity of the other officer who was relieved of duty. His name is Preston Hemphill. He is a 5-year veteran of the force, and we are learning that on his body cam, you can see that he was one of the officers who tried to pin Nichols down during that initial altercation, and authorities say that he also used his taser. Now, today, the attorneys for Tyre Nichols' family are coming out very strongly, saying they are disappointed that these revelations are just now coming to light, saying in a statement, quote, "It certainly begs the question why the white officer involved in this brutal attack was shielded and protected from the public eye, and to date from sufficient discipline and accountability." Now, Hemphill's attorney says that his client has been fully cooperative and points out that he was only involved in the initial confrontation and not the second, more violent part of that encounter. Joe?
Yeah, and that attorney saying that those 4 videos that were released by Memphis police on Friday, one of those was Officer Hemphill's body camera video. Let's talk about the fire department developments today. What are we learning about these EMTs who were fired?
Yeah, so we knew that several fire department personnel had been placed on leave, but we hadn't gotten any details up until this point about who they were or what they had done. And we now have the names of these personnel who were fired: 2 EMTs, Robert Long and Jamichael Sandridge, and 1 Lieutenant, Michelle Whitaker. All 3 of them responded to the scene. And we're learning that when those 2 EMTs arrived, police told them that Tyre Nichols had been pepper sprayed, and they checked him for that. But the fire department says that they failed to do an adequate assessment of the patient and some of his other injuries. And we're also learning from the statement that was released that the lieutenant never even got out of the fire truck. And so the fire department again saying that all 3 of these people have been fired, saying that they violated numerous MFD policies and protocols. Joe?
Priscilla, just overall, what is the mood like on the ground right now there in Memphis? And how is Nichols' family preparing for the funeral, which is going to take place in just a little over 24 hours on Wednesday?
Yeah, Joe, there are a mix of emotions here on the ground. On one hand, there is anger that this has happened again and that a person has been killed at the hands of police, and we've seen that spilling out into the streets with these protests. But as I speak to people here, yes, there is anger and there is hurt, but there is also some relief that these officers have been charged, that it appears that there will be accountability in this case, although people are still holding out to